Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump To It. As usual, I've Johnny Ward and Emma Nagle with me here, and we're going to look back at all things Royal Ascot. Johnny, Emma, welcome to the show.
How are you, Vinny?
All good, thanks. Now, Emma, how did Royal Ascot treat you from a betting point of view? Did you win a few quid?
Definitely didn't win a few quid anyway. I'd be surprised if anyone came out of Royal Ascot on top last week, the amount of double price figure winners, but it was an enjoyable spectacle, I suppose. I picked out one Villanova Queen, but apart from that I was fairly oblivious to the big price winners. So yeah, the bookies are definitely happier than the punters this week, I'd say, so it's a tough one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was very difficult. Johnny, how did you fare? Any better than Emma?
Lost money, Vinny, but really enjoyed it, actually. I think the international aspect of it really puts Cheltenham to shame to some respects. I mean, you'd runners from the US, Australia, Hong Kong, regularly enough, and loads of Irish runners as well. Great Irish achievements over there. And the funny thing with Royal Ascot that I feel, even though it's a 5-day meet and Cheltenham is a 4-day meet, it doesn't feel that any race is really sort of a race too many. All the races seem to have competitiveness. They seem to have a proper place in the whole Royal Ascot week, and I enjoyed it immensely. I lost money at a couple of bigger bets towards the end of the week that were beaten, and I think if you were a punter you did well to win money, but I really enjoyed it. I did speak to a bookmaker, an Irish bookmaker at the weekend. He replied that he'd had a touch at Royal Ascot, and I think that sums up exactly what punters didn't have.
I'd agree with you 100%. I certainly didn't have a touch anyway, I know that much. Yeah, I'll be licking wounds for a while. Just a few other things out of Royal Ascot, just from besides the crazy results, whereas Emma said half the winners were double priced or bigger, including our 150 to 1 chance, an Irish winner. Then we had the big story, I suppose, is Frankie Dettori. He cut all the headlines on TV anyway. They focused on him all week. But he retires at 52 years of age from Royal Ascot, 81 winners. Ryan Moore is only 2 behind him. He's only 39 years of age. He had 6 winners, 8 seconds. And then, of course, the great Leicester, 116. You'd wonder, will Ryan Moore catch him? He'll certainly catch Frankie, presuming he's only got a couple of winners to find on him. But what did you make of that? Do you think, how good was Frankie? He's fantastic for the sport. He'll certainly be missed. Will he, Emma?
Yeah, 100% he'll be missed. I don't think racing will ever find a new Frankie Dettori, but like last year, maybe I was questioning, was he still as good as ever? But I think he's definitely gone out on top of his game. I don't think anyone can say that he's been pushed into retirement, because even at his age, he's riding probably as well as ever. Look, massive loss. It was a pity. His last ride, he seemed quite deflated afterwards. I think was it the well fancied one? I didn't get out on top, but like he retires ahead of Ryan Moore, but it's probably a short term achievement. As you mentioned, Ryan's still very young and probably going after Leicester's title more so than Frankie's now. But yeah, he'll be sorely missed.
And what about that, Johnny, from the Ryan Moore camp anyway? He ends up top jockey, 10th time I think in 14 years he's received that title at Royal Ascot. He'd 6 winners, but he'd 8 seconds. He could have had an unbelievable week, couldn't he, if things had fallen his way?
He could have, yeah. Like the stat with the so many winners, double figure prices. Like, I actually think that's good for racing in a way. I think it shows it's really competitive, and it shows that all the horses are trying here, and that you're going to get big price winners, but you can kind of make a case for most of them. And that's the week that Ryan Moore had. He had a good week and a bad week, as you say, a lot of seconds. Frankie rode in 25 races, which at his age at Royal Ascot, that's incredible going. I doubt many jockeys rode in more than that. Shamie Heffernan on the second day of Limerick, he rode in all 7 races, 51. Next month, and Shamie said to me on at Limerick that he felt he was riding better at 51 than 21, and he admitted that he told Frankie he shouldn't be retiring. And would it amaze you if Frankie had a U-turn, lads?
I suppose it wouldn't. We've seen plenty of U-turns in the past all over the place, haven't we, in racing? It seems to be nearly the guaranteed thing in racing that you get a U-turn. Look, he could well come back for 1 or 2 races in a year or two somewhere, some big festival somewhere, or maybe like Leicester came back as well, didn't he? Came back from jail and everything to ride winners at Breeders' Cups and all the rest of it, so you'd never know. What do you think, Emma? Do you think we could see Frankie again?
I mean, we saw Davy Russell do it. I wouldn't put it past Frankie doing it as well, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, like if he was getting kind of maybe for the big international races, like you were saying, I don't think he's going to come back. Even at the moment, I suppose he's not riding too many. Like he's not riding 7 races in Limerick like Shane Heffron in his like, but he's so utilized kind of worldwide. I wouldn't be shocked because it's a great lifestyle for him, even if if he was going over to Hong Kong and America and France. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me completely. It might be a bit of a shout there from Johnny.
Yeah. All right. One other thing that got me out of Royal Ascot, or that propped up in my head about it, is horses running twice in the week. We saw several of them run twice in the week. They're not allowed to do it at Cheltenham. Is that a good thing, a bad thing, Johnny?
Well, I don't think the Cheltenham thing makes any sense. I mean, if you're a Tasca trainer, I think Willie Mullins likes 3 weeks between his races. But like, I was talking to Ken Condon about his best horses, Moss Tucker, the other day, and Ken had actually won a race in Limerick with a horse he'd been running quite a lot. And I was saying, like, it's not like you to do that. And she was only a young horse, but he said, well, it depends on how you're taking your racing. But like, is it that much to ask a sprinter to run like on a Wednesday and run on a Saturday, even at the top level? Probably it isn't. And if Willie Mullins is happy, like I half thought Vauban would run again on the Saturday, to be honest. We've seen Tony Martin running a horse 3 times in Galway and so on and so forth. Like for me, Cheltenham made stupid tinkering with rules for reasons that don't really back up why they're doing it in the first place. But why not? And I think it adds to the. I mean, was it Choisier won both the 2 sprints back in the day when he ran in Royal Ascot? And I mean, if the owner is happy and the trainer is happy, why not? As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's a funny rule in Cheltenham. I'd certainly, with it being, when it was 3 days, we used to see horses run twice there. Now it's 4 days and they're only allowed to run once. Anyway, we'll move back to Royal Ascot. Let's look through the days. Let's go through them each. Just some of the highlights. Tuesday, as you mentioned previously, we had Vauban, and we also had Paddington. 2 fair horses, 2 good Irish winners. That was nearly the best day from a punting point of view, from my side of it anyway. What did you make of them, Emma? Vauban, could it win a Melbourne Cup?
Yeah, if he's heading there, I presume he'll head there, but will the Australians leave him on? There was kind of a bit of drama there last year, wasn't there? Kind of very strict vetting procedures and this and that. But yeah, if he looks like he could probably be better on the flat than he is over hurdles at the moment. But in fairness to him, like, this year has been a funny year for him. I think Willie was kind of always saying it was going to be like that, and the flat might just kind of leave us see how good he actually is. Like, he was absolutely brilliant at Ascot. Couldn't have done any easier. He's a listed winner in France. I think you need to have placed in a listed race at least to get into the Melbourne Cup. So he satisfied that. Maybe he would have won the Gold Cup if he was in it as well. Like, his performance was absolutely massive. Yeah, I suppose Tuesday was the easiest day for punters. A couple of favourites went in. Not too many big price winners. Vauban was obviously heavily punted, and Paddington as well was one that I liked. I was very impressed by him, in fairness. Really stepped up again on his Guineas win, I think. And yeah, he's one I'm kind of looking forward to seeing. Siuni had a great week. Himself and Frankel and Galileo kind of tied for top sire with 3 winners each. So nice to see that kind of spreading around a bit as well. It's kind of the dominance of Galileo still kind of living through his son Frankel, I suppose. But there was a lot of different sires had winners this week as well as trainers. So it's good variety.
Yeah, 27 individual sires, I think, had winners at Royal Ascot of the 35 races. Johnny, what about Paddington? Beats Chaldine 3 3/4 lengths. Like 2 Guineas winners clashing was fantastic to see, but there's only 1 winner, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's an incredible stat about the Stallions, considering Emma's that they 3 each. I forgot, I didn't realise Galileo. I know Akita Sushi won and he had that filly during the week, so it shows that, like, Frankel was definitely the dominant sire of the week for me. He was, like, obviously had the Gold Cup winner, he had 1-2s in big race and all that, but I think Emma spoke about, and Paddington could be a very interesting stallion going forward for Coolmore, because I know he's gone the same route as Autad in terms of winning the Madrid, and I know the racing journalists enjoyed having Madrid, considering how prestigious the race was. But he's an interesting sire going forward, because he can be he can be mated with all those all those Galileo bred mares, because he doesn't have that Galileo in the pedigree. And that was a very good performance. I think you could say maybe that the Irish Guineas, well, was it that strong of a race? But I thought he was very, very good. And Aidan's winner of the Coventry as well, River Tiber. I know he sort of he fell in a bit at the end, but he's another really interesting horse pedigree wise, in terms of a stallion that Coolmore could try going forward as it looks for this replacement for Galileo. And he's by Wooden Bassett as well, who's a stallion that they put a bit of money in. That was one of the interesting things for me throughout the week. I was trying to look for something that's going to emerge in terms of the next stallion prospect. And I think if you add Augusta Rodan, who obviously has a bit of Galileo in him, or a bit of Sadler as well, as if you add Augusta Rodan in, and you add Paddington, and you add in River Tiber, like Aidan, I think will be really, really happy with this week. Not so much entirely just because of the winners he had, but because he's increasing the chances of having a very good sire that isn't Galileo down the line.
Very good. We move on to Wednesday. Villanova Queen, Emma, your 25-1 winner. Jessica Harrington, Colin Keane. Colin Keane's first winner at Royal Ascot, which I couldn't believe. That was one. And then we had Mostadaf beating Luxembourg 4 lengths in the Prince of Wales Stakes. That horse was very well backed, Mostadaf, as well. What do you make of that, Emma? Villanova Queen was obviously your highlight.
Yeah, Villanova Queen's a highlight for me. Brilliant to see Jessica Harrington getting her winner. And Colin Keane as well. It's hard to believe it's his first Ascot winner, I suppose, but he gave her a lovely ride. And it's kind of going back to the press morning at Jessica Harrington's back in April, and like she was very sweet on Villanova Queen back then. I think she actually went and won in Tipperary the evening of the press morning. So that was a massive performance for her. And Mostadaf, as you mentioned, probably one of the most impressive winners of the week, really, beating Luxembourg at Adier. I couldn't have him before the race, to be honest. I was very sweet in Luxembourg, but yeah, he really put his foot on it, and like it was a strong race because Adier and Luxembourg are both pretty good horses. Like Adier's a Derby winner, obviously. Luxembourg has done plenty as well. Irish Champion Stakes winner. So yeah, it was another strong day. Probably getting a bit harder for punters at this stage. A few more bigger price winners going in as well. But yeah, I suppose Villanova Queen my highlight of the day anyway.
All right, we'll move on to talking about big price winners. Thursday, Johnny. Valiant Force, 150-1 for Adrian Murray and Rossa Ryan. And we also had Courage Mon Ami, Gold Cup winner for Unbeaten still as well, for Frankie Dettori. What did you make of that? Particularly Valiant Force, I think, from our point of view.
Yeah, Tuesday seemed a long time away for me at this stage. I had a very good day Tuesday, but that was by far my best day of the week. I was very sweet and absurd, kind of to run well, maybe without Vauban, and he did. I thought he emerged with great credit with it. We didn't mention him. Obviously, he was second in the race, coming from out of the clouds in a really bad run race. But then on to Wednesday, all the Frankel horses I backed this week certainly wasn't backing Mostadaf, and the Frankel horses I backed, Vinny, all absolutely flopped. So then on to the Thursday, I was kind of like not feeling quite as good about life. And in the first race in the Norfolk, I backed both Elite Status, who was third, and His Majesty, who was fourth. And I think I backed another horse in the race as well. So I was beaten by 150-1 shot and a 66-1 shot. But a bit like Gavin Cromwell beating me later on in the week, there was some kind of joy in it. For Adrian Murray to have a horse win like this is, I think this is a good result for racing in many ways. Like, the horse wasn't out of his depth, and if you look back at his run, his second run, in fairness, he was kind of all on his own and faded over the 6 furlongs. He was dropping back in 5, and I know a few people on Twitter did put this horse up, and Adrian Murray to have a winner Royal Ascot, to me that's what it's all about. Courage Mon Ami, then I was heavily on Coltrane here, so this wasn't a great result for me either. And of course Frankel did me, and I thought this ride was, I just thought this was a fantastic ride from Frankie. He was so patient on the horse. Could have gone all P-Tong on him. He just waited for the gap. It came, and he probably timed his run well. And I just thought, looking at the finish of him and Oisin Murphy, was two really, really good riders. And Frankie, it was just hard to believe that he is coming to the end when you see how well he rode in this race. And this was the day when I thought Alice Aoife was going to be a star. She was another Frankel that absolutely bombed for me, and Warm Heart showing that Galileo is still going strong. I think that was Galileo's first winner of the week. But yeah, this was a bloodbath for me. And then I tipped up Docklands in the Britannia, but didn't have a bet in it. And yeah, I don't really want to talk about this day anymore.
Okay, move on to Friday. Shaquille beating Little Big Bear, another shock there. For me, anyway, it was. In the Commonwealth Cup, we had Tahira surviving a Stewart's Inquiry to win the Coronation Stakes, and then King of Steel. I didn't think that'd win. How wrong I was there as well. Frank in the form of Augustus Rodin from the Derby. What did you make of that, Emma? Little Big Bear, that was a disappointment for me. I thought Little Big Bear was different class to what it was meeting, but obviously not.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Like Little Big Bear, it's kind of hard to pin him down now because he obviously massive disappointment first time out in the Guineas this year. Bounced back then to win at Haydock, but again, you just thought he would have been a different class. And his price kind of reflected that, but just didn't spark on the day for whatever reason. So kind of hard to see now, like, will he bounce back again and kind of get back to the same form, or what's going to happen with him? Kind of a bit of a conundrum with him. But I actually backed the winner of the Albany, Donncha O'Brien's filly, Porta Fortuna. Thought she was very, very impressive when she won at Naas. Back in May in the Group 3 race by neck, and look, she just looks like a mare who's going to keep on improving, so she's going to be one I'm going to be keeping an eye on going forward. I just thought, like, very impressive looking filly physically, but it was really a day for the O'Brien brothers, I suppose. I think it was Donncha's first winner at Ascot, and then Joseph, after having a relatively quiet week, picked up the Duke of Edinburgh Stakes later on in the card. So yeah, it was big celebrations in the O'Brien household that evening.
And then we have a look at Saturday. That was another interesting day. We had the Jubilee Stakes, another shock. Kadim, 80-1, Jamie Spencer. Then Pile Driver surviving a Stewart's Inquiry, where Ryan Moore nearly fell asleep at it. And then we had Dawn Rising in the last. Ryan Moore wins the Queen Alexandria for J.P. McManus. Huh? That looks a fair stayer, doesn't it? What you make of that day, Johnny?
Yeah, well, I suppose if this was I was working on Saturday, and I was kind of half between working and the hurling, so I was wasn't really too intent on betting on Royal Ascot, but I still managed to have a couple of losers fairly early on the card. Pearls and Rubles was one of them. Had a good bet on that, and then onto the Jersey. I lost money on the Jersey as well. I backed Covey on that because I liked the drift, another son of Frankel who flopped. And then in the Hardwick, I went against Pile Driver with Free Wind, who I thought was quite disappointing as well. So by the end, my last tip of Royal Ascot was Dawn Rising, but I didn't have a bet in this race, and I'd have an awful lot of sympathy, Vinny, for anyone who backed Run for Oscar. And I imagine, and I don't think I'm exaggerating here when I think there would have been some punters who basically they had Run for Oscar to kind of get them out of jail a bit in the last, or at least to sort of make it a reasonable week rather than a bad week. And this just really was I suppose the icing on the cake in terms of bad luck, because I thought Run for Oscar was unlucky. Dawn Rising, in fairness, he looked like a horse, no flat horse really, or nearly 2 miles and 6, but I thought this test was going to suit him, and Ryan Moore just kept it simple. He kept out of trouble, he showed a good attitude, and stamina won the day. But I suppose what was the highlight on the last day? It was nice to see Gavin Cromwell have another winner in Royal Ascot. Like, Snellen only had the one first time out, and I thought, to be fair, I thought Pearls and Rubies had every chance. Snellen, I felt, she basically was the worthy winner of the day, filly by expert eye, and Gavin, I think, is going to have plenty of fun with her going forward. And I suppose just the last word on Little Big Bear, like, I fancied him big time as well, and I thought he was very disappointed. You look at the ratings of the horse around him, like, he probably ran to about 105 on the day, and very, very disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. Don't know where to go with him now. Anyway, going to move on away from Ascot. We had a couple of other big things cropped up last week. First one is Rona Mcnally'S appeal against his 12-year disqualification. That appeal was heard. It turns out that he's still got a 12-year suspension. They've suspended the last 4 years of it, and he's still disqualified, but there's supposed to be new rules coming soon which will allow him to actually go racing even though he's a disqualified person. What I thought was very interesting about this is, when you read the verdict that was issued by the appeal panel after this, it's crazy stuff, because it's all on points of law. It's about what was admissible and what wasn't in the evidence in the appeal, because the McNally side wanted to bring in a whole load of new evidence and they weren't allowed to bring it in. It wasn't admissible, so therefore everything stood. this is an issue going forward. It has to be a big issue for the sport. Is the fact that if you do find yourself in trouble, if you're someone who's licensed by the IHRB and you find yourself in trouble, it's very difficult to go there on your own, as we saw with David Dunn recently, who was also involved in that Rona McNally case. He got short shrift when he went. They just blew him out of the water. Something similar to McNally as well. Not saying whether any of the things he was bringing up as new evidence made any real difference. I have no idea, because they didn't actually go to take them into account as such. But it's not about that. It's about the fact that you really need proper barristers representing you now. And I even wonder, do you need them at the racecourse with you? Because if you're brought into a Stewart's inquiry, that evidence is ultimately used in these referral hearings, in appeals and everything else. What do you think, Johnny? Is this a mess? Is it for the sport going forward?
Yeah, it was and I still think the punishment is just so severe. Like I spoke to Ronan Sequel, I talked to him on whatever day it was at Limerick, but at that stage he is barred now. He was barred from going racing because the appeal had been heard. As you mentioned, the idea of having your own representation, I mean, I can think of some cases where a specific trainer had some of the highest legal personalities in the game involved, and he got away with something to me that looked an open and shut case. It looked absolutely black and white on the day, but the fact that showed, and this obviously, but I think it showed that you need good representation, and it's very, very hard for Ronan. Like I think you'd want to be living on another planet to say he didn't do something wrong, but the challenge for the IHRB here is, and I think Brian O'Connor wrote well about this in the Irish Times, is the challenge is if you're going to treat Ronan like this and you're going to look at stuff retrospectively and you're going to use this case as an example to make an example of one trainer and show to others what you can or can't do, you got to back this up now and follow it up, because Ronan McNally is far from the worst man in racing, yet he's basically been barred for life.
Okay. Emma, what do you make of it? Something similar, I presume?
Yeah, no, I'd echo Johnny's thoughts. Like I'm sure we've spoken about it plenty, but I just think the punishment is very, very harsh. Like, I mean, I think no one, like Johnny said, no one's doubting that he has done wrong, but I mean, it is effectively a lifetime ban. I know the last 4 years have been suspended, I think, but still it's kind of going to more or less put an end to his training career. It's kind of going to be very hard to come back after that length of time. Like, it's good that he can go racing. I mean, that's something, I suppose, because, his son is such a personality in racing already at a young age. You'd imagine he's going to rise the ranks as a jockey in kind of the near future. But I suppose it's small compensation really for, he's built up. I know it's not his first business. He has business outside of racing, but he's built up his yard, bought horses, and it's just kind of taken away. And unless the kind of whole sport changes, that everyone is being treated like this, it's going to be seen as a very, very harsh judgment for a long time. Bit unfair, like you were saying about the legal representation. It's similar to the David Dunn thing. It's tough for trainers to know, I suppose, the kind of level of knowledge that you'd need to represent yourself in an appeal like this. I think it just shows kind of, I suppose, it's no good for Rona now, but for anyone kind of going forward who will be facing a similar kind of appeal, they'll have to seek legal, kind of strong legal representation to have any chance of overturning it, because I don't think any kind of layman could really defend themselves kind of to the way that would be needed to kind of oppose the sanctions against you.
Yeah, well, talking about that, we've got an appeal coming up, we're told, is Dennis Hogan. He got suspended for 3 months, his licence taken away for prohibitive substances. It's his fourth offence, I think. So it was a totting up thing more than anything else. It wasn't necessarily around this particular incident, but he's talking about appealing. I presume he's going to need good legal representation if he's to stand any chance there. What did you make of this one, Johnny? He's a high-profile trainer, Dennis Hogan.
Yeah, I spoke to him at Limerick, and obviously he was quite cognizant of it. But I mean, and will admit himself that this stuff isn't it's not great, because it is a totting up procedure. We have the ongoing Yufton case as well, which has been in the news, and obviously that it remains to be seen what will come from that. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. The one thing you would say about Dennis is that the IHRB, and I do actually think this is important, the IHRB was very complimentary of the way Dennis handled himself in this, and he more or less admitted his guilt. and he said, I'm going to avert you. He behaved well. He wasn't belligerent. He wasn't filling them with a load of bullshit either about what happened. But at the same time, Dennis can't keep getting in the news over stuff like this or kind of run-ins with the IHRB because, eventually it does take its toll, I think.
Yeah, well, the one thing to mention here is that this particular case with Dennis Hogan, it was a minor enough infringement in the sense that a horse he had a winner with tested positive for things that are used in common day practices with horses. And what happened was one of the particular substances, the vet had advised a 40-day cooling off period with the substance before the horse was to race, and he raced the horse after 31 days and it tested positive. So it wasn't as if there was anything underhand going on here. He just didn't allow the full 40 days, but seemingly he's a history of doing something similar. So that's why there's the proper rap on the knuckles here with a 3-month suspension. As I say, it's just interesting again that when you go through all of these, it seems to be the same cohort of trainers that always seem to get themselves in trouble, isn't it? And I wonder as well with this, is it a fact that the smaller trainers, they can't really keep on top of all of these things because they're trying to do so many things to, running your horses, dealing with owners, all the different entry requirements and all the different traveling, because a lot of these smaller trainers are traveling with the horses to the tracks as well. When you look at the other side of it, the Aidan O'Briens with teams of people looking after all these elements. Willie Mullins, I'm sure, is the same, and all those top yards. So is that the reason, Johnny, do you think? Is it the smaller yards are getting in trouble because they just can't cope with the amount of procedures and requirements around regulations and everything else to keep on top of them? Or is it just the case that they're easy targets?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the likes of Dennis Hogan, he's a smaller trainer, but he's a lot of horses. Like, he's running horses left, right, and centre, and obviously there's an awful lot going on. I do wonder at times how trainers have the time to do anything. They've an extremely busy life. Like, maybe that is the case, but I mean, at the same time, Dennis has to hold his hands up here and say, like, well, if it's too much for me, I need more staff or whatever else it is, because there are a lot of other trainers of the same ilk that have haven't a rap sheet, anything like this. And I don't know if that's an excuse, but I would certainly hope that the IHRB would treat Aidan O'Brien or Dermot Weld or Ger Lyons or anyone else the exact same as they treat Rona McNally or anyone else if the same case came to mind.
Yeah. Emma, what about that from your point of view with your dad training horses? How does he handle this? Because there's an awful lot of rules and regulations, isn't there, to keep on top of?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's no different to any other business, really. I don't think a small trainer can really complain too much about that. You're getting into a business where there's a lot of, I mean, we need these kind of regulations in racing, the medical registry records and all the other kind of more kind of nitty-gritty kind of admin-y type jobs. But I mean, look, everyone has to do it in every business, in every walk of life. I don't think people can kind of use it as an excuse too much. Look, you'd say maybe 1 mistake, 2 mistakes, but if their mistakes keep repeating, I think you kind of have to look at yourself a bit more and sort it out, because it's like every other walk of life. You can't just keep doing the same thing, getting it wrong. I suppose we saw with Garrod Bruder, kind of probably is a good example of that. Now, I thought his punishment was quite harsh for an admin mistake like that, but there is a lot of kind of new technology. There's new apps, and we actually spoke about one on the Irish National Stud tour the other day. There's kind of new apps coming in that are helping trainers with the medical records and this and that. So no, look, I don't think it can be used too much as an excuse, to be honest.
That's fair enough. All right, look, we'll move on to the last thing. If you can each give me a horse from last week you think is going to win somewhere soon, get us out of trouble after what happened in Ascot. I should be learning from my mistakes like those smaller trainers. No more betting. That'd be a good answer after the last week I had. Anyway, Emma, have you one for us?
I suppose an eye-catching loser at Ascot, I thought, was Alabama. It's probably a kind of a strange one to give us one to follow, because he was probably the most followed horse in the country, the most followed 2-year-old in the country, I suppose, earlier on in the year when Aidan O'Brien put him up as he's one to follow. But I thought he was quite unlucky, and he's maybe not so unlucky, but he was well ahead in his group, and I thought he just ran a great race. Maybe if he had a bit more company, he could have been a bit closer. He finished 5th in the end, but for a long time he looked like a winner. So I'd be surprised if he didn't come out and kind of maybe show he's been disappointing so far, I suppose, given Aidan's expectations of him. But I'd be surprised if he didn't maybe show a bit more close to what Aidan was projecting he might do.
Very good. What about you, Johnny? Have you got one?
I'm going to go to Limerick, and it was one of Shamie Heffernan's rides on. Was it Friday or Saturday? It's hard to remember now at this stage. I think it was on the Saturday. Yeah, Shamie had a full book of rides on Saturday. The double the Friday, and he had 7 rides on Saturday, including fancied horses, and didn't have a winner and had some unlucky losers as well. And I thought Sir John Monash was definitely in that category. I actually went up to Connections afterwards. I was just wondering, is this horse going to go hurdling? Because he's a 3-year-old and he is by Sea the Stars, and his previous run when he was with Kevin Frost was over 1.5 miles, and they dropped him back to 7, which looked too short on debut for Pat Murphy, but he was mad eye-catching the way he really probably should have won the race. I certainly should have given it a big shout. He's only beaten half a length in the end. He's Sea the Stars out of High Chaparral, real middle distance pedigree, and Shamie said they could go chasing with him as well as hurdling. I think he might have been taking the piss, but he might have been a bit frazzled at that stage. I think this horse is fascinating going forward for a very talented trainer.
Very good. Well, the only one I'm going to give you is one that won't win. Is a horse called the Grand Visor. Jesus, I've never seen anything like this in Ascot last week. He ran first off in the Ascot Stakes over 2.5 miles, and the trip was too short for him. Nearest at the finish, flying at the finish, only beaten bits and pieces for a place, finished 8th of 19. Comes out then again, second run in the week, runs in the Queen Alexandra with Dawn Rising and the rest of the Irish in that. Off level weights with Dawn Rising, beaten half a length over 2 miles, 5.5 furlongs. Trip looks too short again. I don't know where they're going to find a race longer than that. The longest race in the calendar, that is, on the flat. What's interesting with the Grand Visor is the first crop of Frankels, a 9-year-old, and it's still a maiden over hurdles. They had 6 goes over hurdles a few years ago. Haven't run it over hurdles for 3 years. Just maybe, if Ian Williams decides to have a pop at a 3.5 mile hurdle race somewhere, you wouldn't mind looking at that. A maiden hurdle, even a 3 mile maiden hurdle, perhaps at some point. Anyway, that was my one from the week that caught my eye more than anything else. Look, thanks for watching. And we've got the Derby, of course, coming up this weekend. 3-day festival in the Curragh should be great. We've got Augustus Rodan is going to be a short price favourite to win back-to-back derbies after the English performance, 1 to 3, I think, at the moment. We've also got White Birch and Spreewell likely to run there, so it should be a bit of a race. It won't have a solo anyway. We'll be back next week. We'll chat about all that happened at the Curragh, and make sure to subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you all again next Monday, hopefully. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.